Hello, everybody. This is Tom Eckert here. You're listening to my podcast, Numerology, a GPS for the soul. This is your place to learn about the true power of numerology and how to use it to bring out the best in yourself, understand your loved ones better, take wise decisions, and prepare for your future. In other words, how to live your life aligned with your true destiny. Take your time to educate yourself and share these podcasts with your friends and family so they too can enjoy the great benefits of numerology. Enjoy! Hello there and welcome to all my listeners. Today we have a very interesting topic about predictive numerology. It's going to be a series of episodes dedicated to this topic. And today we're starting by talking about how personal years and period cycles come together to form the basis of predictive numerology. But before I talk any further, I first of all want to welcome you if you're new here and to tell you that this podcast is dedicated to discussing numerology as a path for inner transformation, inner growth, self-understanding, spiritual growth. And my particular approach to numerology is to make it accessible, applicable, and grounded for everyday life matters. So you can actually use it to ground your actions in a conscious way, to align with the energies in your life, to make decisions in a conscious way, to simply live a better life based on numerology. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. If you want to skip this part, you can simply skip a few minutes forward to the actual beginning of the topic of the episodes. However, I really recommend you listen through because I have a few very exciting updates about the podcast that will involve you, my listeners, and also an invitation to a free numerology event. So here we go. In addition to the podcast material that I publish regularly, I will start recording freestyle episodes. That's how I like to call them, where I analyze your charts. It's super exciting and very engaging. And I'm doing that because I would love to have more direct contact with my listeners. And I would love you to feel, first of all, at home in this podcast, enriched by this podcast, and also experience the depth and the impact of numerology. And make this podcast a place you can truly grow from. I will also be doing freestyle episodes where I delineate and analyze charts of famous people. Now, how can you take part? Well, in order to have a chance for your chart being analyzed and chosen, all you have to do is write me your full name at birth, including middle names, your date of birth, and your email address. When you're writing your date of birth, please make sure that the month is written as a word. For example, November 5th, 1975 or August 8th, 1980. Okay? Please don't write the month as a number to make sure that I understand when you were born, right? Because there's the American or the European format and I don't want any confusions. Please do so by answering the question below the podcast description on Spotify on your phone. You will see exactly where you can insert this information. Now, if you can't find this section or if you aren't listening via Spotify, you can send me these same details via the contact form on my website. And just to make sure you aren't scared or anything, your details are visible only to me and they will never be shared. I will, and you can also, of course, add a famous figure that you'd like me to analyze. You'd like to hear me analyze. So make sure you can add, a few people, even if you have the space to write them. Now, I will then do a raffle and choose random charts to analyze every time I record such a freestyle chart analysis episode. And I will notify you if you were chosen via my newsletter. That's why I'm asking for your email. It won't be a full reading, but more of an overview and a taste of your chart. I will most probably include up to 3 charts per episode, but this is still a new experiment, so I will just have to see how it goes. Now, if you were chosen in the raffle, you can let me know if you want me to mention your full name or not during the episode when analyzing your chart. That's, of course, all up to you. So that's one thing. Second update is I also like to invite you to a free online webinar I'll be giving about numerology for way showers and leaders of consciousness. It'll take place on October 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Germany time, Central European time, CET, via Zoom. This meeting is dedicated to people who have interest in numerology and in spiritual tools that can uplift themselves and humanity and others to a higher level of consciousness. It's for people who want to leave a positive impact on the world by helping people to evolve consciously. If you're considering, for example, to pursue a spiritual career where you truly touch and transform the lives of people, where you guide them and unlock the codes of their life path for them, then this is a great event to take part in. You're very welcome to join. Now, to register to this event, make sure to click on the link to my meetup group. It's provided in the episode description. You first have to join the group and then make sure to RSVP to secure your spot. There too, I will be doing a raffle during my webinar, and I will demonstrate on 3 randomly chosen numerology charts from the details that you, my listeners, sent me. And so the way to be part of that is exactly as mentioned earlier. Make sure to write your full name at birth, including middle names and date of birth, leaving your email address as well. Remember to write the month as a word. And fill in the details in that question section, right, that I mentioned earlier. Or if you're not listening through Spotify, then via the contact form on my website. And again, remember your details are visible only to me and will not be shared. Last but not least, my friends, after these updates and before we jump into the topic of today's episode, thank you first of all for bearing with me so much so far. A few important things should you want to dive deeper into numerology itself. I highly recommend you book a numerology reading to get to know yourself on a profound level and expand your consciousness. In a reading, you can ask any question that is burning in your life and get crystal clear answers that will lead you to the next step on your path of inner growth. Contact me through the link in the podcast or episode description to book your reading with me. Secondly, if you wish to pursue numerology on a deeper level, to know yourself with profound clarity, and if you want to become a way shower, I'm inviting you to check out my numerology study paths. The first one is check out my self-study numerology course to learn the fundamentals of numerology in a comprehensive way and at your own pace. Or join me on my complete path of certification from beginner to numerology expert and get certified as a professional numerologist. To read more, make sure to check out the links in the podcast and episode description. Okay, my friends, so now we are ready to dive into the topic of our episode, predictive numerology. So by and large, we can say that numerology is divided into 2 compartments. The compartment of self-knowledge, where you get to know your own blueprint, makeup, shadows, traumas, and character. And the compartment of predictive numerology. Predictive numerology has been practiced since age-old to assist us in understanding our life's events from a broader perspective that includes past, present, and future. And by doing so, allow us to gain insight into experiences we went through, are going through, and will go through. It also helps us prepare ourselves much better for what's coming. be it a wonderful opportunity or a bumpy road ahead. It also helps us align and live in harmony with the changing tides of time, the changing cosmic tides, so as to live life with as little resistance, one can say. This episode, and perhaps the coming two after it, will be dedicated to predictive numerology. I will attempt to share some of the methodologies used to make predictions in numerology and introduce you to the way of thinking that allows a numerologist to make predictions. In today's episode, our focus will revolve around personal years, period cycles, and how they work together to form predictions. So let us dive into personal years to begin with. Personal years run from birthday to birthday, and not from January to January, like the universal year. Although some numerologists do work this way, but I'm not going to discuss that in this episode. The personal years are like changing seasons, aligned with our particular journey. If you haven't done so yet, by the way, you can listen to my podcast episode about personal years. Personal years will always move in a sequential order from 1 to 9 and then back to 1 and all the way to 9. At times, we'll have master number personal years, and at times, karmic debt personal years. All of these details matter a lot, as master numbers and karmic debts have a particular vibration and influence on the number they govern. You can also, by the way, listen to my episodes about master numbers and karmic debt numbers. Knowing what personal year you're in and the one to come, and to understand the context and meaning of the cycle is already a big step in activating the predictive power of numerology. You calculate your personal year by writing down your day and month of birth, and then adding the last year in which you celebrated your birthday. For example, at the moment of recording this episode, we are in September 3rd. And so let's say your birthday let's say your birthday always takes place in July 2nd, right? So your last birthday was on July 2nd, 2023. Let's say your birthday is always on the 5th of November, okay? That means your birthday still hasn't taken place in 2023. That would mean your last birthday was November 5th, 2022. You still have a bit to go, right, to end your personal year from your last birthday, so to speak, from November till November. And you will shift your next personal year in November 5th, 2023. I hope that makes it a little clearer. So you add all these details, your day and month of birth and the last year you've celebrated your birthday in, and then you reduce all of that to a single digit. And that'll reveal your personal year to you. Now, there's a more advanced and more accurate method of calculation that I teach that enables you to reveal the master number and the karmic debt years. But that you can learn in my self-study numerology course or find it on my website blog. Now that I've said a bit about personal years, let us talk about period cycles. The period cycles are a much bigger cycle in our life, and as such, they give the context to the personal years. They are a much broader energetic stroke, so to speak, whose job is to mold us into the humans we are meant to be and become. I personally like to refer to period cycles as a school environment, and that the universe has set up for us to learn what we've come here to learn in this lifetime. Again, if you haven't done so yet, make sure to listen to my episode about the period cycles to gain more insight into that, more understanding. Period cycles have a minimum duration of 9 years, but can also last 30 years, 35 years, and even longer. We have 2 period cycles at any given time. One is called the cycle, and one is called the pinnacle. Now, don't confuse the word cycle with period cycles, okay? Period cycles refer to the whole thing, the cycle and the pinnacle. There's also a challenge in there, but I'm not going to talk about it in this episode. So the period cycle is the overarching title, and then within it, we have the cycle and the pinnacle. And together they form a school environment uniquely curated for our needs and intentions as a soul. To give an example, a person going through a cycle 3 and pinnacle 1 needs to learn to focus on themselves, develop self-expression, have many fun and exciting experiences, connect to the spirit of youth within them, and so on. A person going through a 4 cycle and 8 pinnacle will be called to work hard, to be more career-oriented, most probably have to take care of their body, perhaps even deal with health issues and so on, be called to take care of their health, etc. Now, everything I'm saying here is, of course, really in a nutshell, only to give you the feeling of it, okay? So, once you understand the period cycles you're in, you understand the bigger context of what you are meant to be and become. And within that context, your personal years take place. And that's a very important point, right? The personal years show you the shorter cycle, we can say, right? Every year, they change every year. So it's a yearly cycle. You understand the changing seasons within the year, but it's very important to understand within what context all of that takes place. Just a short reminder for someone who might have skipped the beginning. On October 5th, I'm going to be giving a free online webinar for way showers and leaders of consciousness. If you want to join, just click on the link to my meetup group and make sure to secure your spot. And secondly, if you are enjoying this podcast and want to keep learning more grounded, applicable, and high quality numerology, make sure to click the follow or subscribe button on the platform you're listening from and become part of my numerology family and get updated with my latest podcast episodes. After this short reminder, let us continue. So let us talk, now that we've kind of explained what personal years are and explained what the period cycles are, let us talk about what happens when they come together, when they work in conjunction with one another. So that's a time that once we understand the role of the personal years, right? Once we understand the role of the period cycles, the context, and then the changing energies within the context, we can start synthesizing these two in order to form a more powerful predictive foundation. Let's say on a more beginner level, or if you're just talking to someone on the go and want to give them some clarity, you can predict basic energies, trends, and events based on one's personal years. Okay? For example, if I know that you are moving into a 9 personal year, I can tell you that you will be asked to let go of certain things in your life that do not serve you anymore. It's a time to move on into a new horizon and leave behind habits, behaviors, people, workplaces, or even places of residence that no longer suit you. Now, by letting go, you will be expanding and growing a lot. It will most probably be very empowering, but on some levels very unsettling, as you will literally go through a metamorphosis. Now, this level of prediction, if you just share with someone on the go, is already very helpful. But it still lacks foundation, as we do not know what is the energetic context in which the 9 personal year, is taking place. In other words, we haven't yet included the period cycles into our predictive calculations. So let's take a look at a fuller predictive interpretation that includes both personal years and period cycles. Say the same person entering a personal year number 9 is right now finishing a cycle and pinnacle of 7 and 8, and moving into a new cycle and pinnacle of 3 and 5. Now, this is quite a shift. Okay? This is quite a shift. And I'm doing this on purpose to kind of give you that feeling of how one can interpret things. So looking at this person's period cycles, 7 and 8, I know that they had invested a lot of energy and time in career, in perfecting what they do. I know that it was a more demanding and more serious time during their life. I know it's a time that required much more effort, much more concentration, and excellence. The 7-8 has a very demanding type of energy. But as they're approaching the 9 year, right, which is a kind of a closing cycle, we talked about letting go before, right, preparing to move into a new horizon. But now we know where they're coming from, the 7-8. Like what kind of horizon they're leaving, what kind of landscape they were in, and what they're leaving behind. And we know that they're slowly shifting into a 3 and 5 period cycle. So we know where they're going into in terms of the bigger context, the bigger landscape. So now that I know these two things, I know that this 9 personal year, will be felt as a very liberating energy. Almost like taking off a huge weight off of one's shoulders. Why? Because they will no longer need to be so serious, under much strain, or invest so much effort in order to be professional and excellent and focus so much on work and effort, right? So the shift of the 9, the type of letting go, is letting go of the 7-8 energy and moving into a 3-5 energy. So now the bigger energetic context is becoming much lighter and freer. That's the nature of the 3-5. Now, naturally, depending on the type of person, this can also be a challenging transition to some, as many of us get very attached to our work, our quote-unquote doing mode and sense of productivity. So to give that up may be challenging to some people. To learn, for example, to be in a space of ease, of spontaneity, of socializing and communication, being more outgoing is not necessarily something that everyone is accustomed to, right? So we have to understand that it's also depending on the person. We'll get into that a bit more in a moment. And yet, the energies will be lighter and freer, or at least invite us to learn to be so. Right? We've learned how to be very serious, dedicated, focused, and now the energies are going to the broader strokes, right? The cycle and the pinnacle will be inviting us to learn how to be easygoing, communicative, networking, social, knowing how to enjoy life. And the 9-year will be a time of letting go exactly of those elements that add to the excess weight that will no longer be necessary in the future to come. And what is the future to come? The broader context, the 3-5. Right? So can you see how it's a bit like a Russian doll. It's like the smaller energy, the personal year, within the bigger energy, the cycle and the pinnacle. Can you see how they both work together to form a foundation of prediction? It's very, very important. Now, I kind of started talking about that different people can react in different ways. So let's kind of circle back to that for a moment and explain that a little bit more in detail. So how will the person react to these changes, right? We're basically saying 9 years is a very kind of expansive time where, things become broader, more open, more liberated, more free, letting go. But again, people can react to this very differently. So a person's reaction to the changes will depend greatly on their core numbers. In other words, their unique character, their unique makeup and blueprint. And how do we know the makeup and blueprint? Of course, by getting to know our core numbers, the 5 core numbers, and the 3 core numbers that are even more central. And you can learn about both, by the way, in my previous episodes. So I'm sure if you scroll through my episodes, you can find an episode talking or explaining about the 5 core numbers, the importance of the 5 core numbers, and also an episode explaining about the 3 core numbers that are most important to get to know oneself or others. So if the above mentioned person, right, moving from 7-8 cycle pinnacle to 3-5 cycle pinnacle during a 9-year, is in nature a more freedom-loving bird, okay? Then moving into the 3-5 period cycle will be experienced as joyful, as wonderful, liberating, easy. The transition is going to be more natural because anyway, that was their type. That is their type. So in fact, being in the 7-8 might have been a bit unnatural, uncomfortable for them. And I want you, everything I'm saying here, I want you to really listen carefully because I'm really showing you the way of thinking of a numerologist, right? I'm not only looking at the period cycles in order to give a prediction or to understand their past, their present, and where they're going to. I'm looking at their actual constitution to understand how the experience was for them. So for a person who's already a more of a free bird, moving from a 7-8 that is a more kind of confining and serious energy into a 3-5 is going to be more natural. However, if that person is more of like a working type, more of a perfectionist in nature, or somebody that finds it hard to be easygoing, spontaneous and more chill, so to speak, this transition may be experienced as more challenging and awkward, and in turn make the 9 personal year confront them with their difficulty of actually saying goodbye to something they held dear. For example, focusing a lot on work, on career, on pushing forward, on studies, on, all these elements that were very, very dear to them. So, as you can see here, one's personal chart has to be taken into consideration when giving predictions in order to understand how the changing tides of time will affect the person in question. So we're really, although in the beginning of the episode I was mentioning, or even in the title of the episode, I'm mentioning personal years and period cycles. In fact, there was a third factor, which is the person's chart. But that always has to be taken into account. And that only comes to show you how rich a real good prediction is. And by the way, why numerology calculators and softwares online don't really take all these factors into consideration, and definitely not all the combinations of these factors. And this is just, the tip of the iceberg of the methodologies and factors you need to take into consideration when giving someone a real detailed numerology reading or predictive numerology reading consultation. So our first step today into predictive numerology started with combining the knowledge of personal years and period cycles. The broader stroke, the period cycles, and the smaller stroke, right? The personal years, that Russian doll, an energy within a broader energy. If you master these two elements well, you can certainly give solid, basic predictions to the people around you, including yourself. So again, don't underestimate the fact that these are relatively basic or fundamental elements of numerology. Mastering these will give you a very solid ability to predict events or the changing tides of time, understanding, where you're coming from and where you're going to. So again, I always say, master the fundamentals before you get into more advanced materials. Now, in the coming episode, we will take our entire predictive journey up a notch by introducing a more advanced and detailed methodology for predicting events and gleaning far more precise and specific information about every period of our lives. So stay tuned, my friends. This is going to be very interesting. And I hope, as always, that this keeps inspiring you to go deeper into numerology, to study numerology, and to hopefully also work as numerologists. It's my aspiration to educate more and more numerologists. And to wrap this up, my friends, don't forget that you can leave your details in order for your charts to be chosen in the raffle when I record chart analysis episodes. These episodes are going to be dedicated to you, my friends, to you, my beloved listeners. And also remember about my free online webinar coming on October 5th, 2023. You can join by clicking on the meetup link and all the instructions I already explained in the beginning. Remember that you can also book yourself a numerology reading. And if you want to dive deeper into numerology, you can check out my self-study numerology course or in-depth numerology studies that include a certification. And lastly, of course, if you enjoyed this podcast and want to keep learning more grounded, applicable, and high-quality numerology, make sure to click the follow or subscribe button on the platform you're listening from and become part of my numerology family and get updated with my latest podcast episodes. Thank you so much for listening and being with me today. And as always, I'll see you in the next episodes. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, and you want to go deeper into numerology, check out my website, tom-eckert.com. You can also book a numerology reading or even study numerology yourself through my courses. I'll see you in the next episode.